Hi guys, today we're finally going to be talking about the Love is Blind Season 8 weddings and reunion. First of all, why was the reunion the best part about Love is Blind this season? I feel like normally it's the complete opposite. Normally the seasons are pretty good and then the reunion is just a flop because in my opinion, Vanessa and Nick Lachey are horrible hosts. But this year, the reunion finally brought all of the drama that I feel like we've all been waiting for all season. I actually really liked it. So honestly, I'm gonna try getting through the weddings as quickly as possible so we can get to the reunion where all of that crazy fallout happened. The moment I sat down and turned on this wedding episode, I noticed that it was an hour and 44 minutes long, and I said, you have to be joking. I said, you certainly cannot be serious. And man, was there a lot of fat in that episode. I was fast forwarding through a ton of boring, mundane conversations that were going nowhere. Honestly, I basically just skipped from altar to altar. I was listening to a few of the family conversations, but really, there was just a lot of super unnecessary things in there. I could not believe it was almost 2 hours. So where we left off in episode 11 was we didn't know whether or not Sarah was gonna say yes to Ben, but thank God she says no. It basically starts right away. She goes, I can't. And she says that it's because she's always wanted her partner to be on the same wavelength. It's honestly a really short speech and it felt very undramatic. It just felt very unceremonious. She just goes, I've always wanted my partner to be on the same wavelength as me. Today I can't. And then she laughs her way back down the aisle and into the car. Honestly, I think she was like very relieved of the decision she made. Like, I think it made her very happy. And I think she was also like a little nervous having all of this attention on her and like having to get up there and say no. Obviously, I would imagine that's like a really hard experience. So I'm gonna chalk it up to nervousness, but the way she was cackling all the way to the car and just being like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. It was kind of a tough watch. But then when they're back, when they're at the altar, rewinding a little bit, Ben says in response, he goes, I want to keep growing our relationship if you'll let me. And then she goes, we'll see. And the audience starts laughing. Honestly, this is such a theme that I've seen in like maybe 3 out of 4 of these weddings they were not very like serious events. The audience was like laughing in like multiple weddings. It just felt like a big joke to a lot of these people, and that's honestly how you could tell they were gonna say no. And then also when Sarah's walking down the aisle to go back, her mom and her sister I think are asking her if she's okay, and she's like, no, just see me in the back, it's okay, it's okay. And her side of the room starts clapping. Oh my god, if I were Ben, the way that I would be so embarrassed, not even just because she said no, but the laughter and the clapping, oh my god, nobody in Sarah's family wanted her to marry that man. Then they're in the car. It's Sarah's sister, her mom, and I don't know if the sister's girlfriend is there, but her sister laughs when Sarah's like, oh, I asked him what his church's views on LGBTQ plus people are, and he didn't know. Her sister starts laughing, and then in her little talking head by herself, she is saying what we've heard all these times, like our values don't align, blah, blah, blah. And then she's bringing up the list of things that they disagree on, and she's like, yeah, I don't understand his stance on LGBTQ plus community. I don't know his stance on like Black Lives Matter and this and this and this. And then she goes, yeah, the vaccine. And I was like, hold on. I was like, we have never ever talked about Ben being an anti-vaxxer. That, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's rewind there. Because like, obviously it tracks. I mean, a lot of that super religious conservative community are also anti-vaxxers, but that was not something we had spoken about before. So I was just kind of like, oh, like that's when I was really like, oh, we knew you were dodging a bullet before, but now it's like, yeah, you dodged a bullet. This man is crazy. Moving on to Joey and Monica, Joey pulls up to the venue with his longboard. And I think in his like confessional, he talks about how like he loves longboarding and it's like a source of stress relief for him. I don't care. And then all of the groomsmen start walking in, and they're all wearing Hawaiian shirts. And now I'm scared, because what is gonna happen with this wedding? Monica's bridesmaids are all holding weeds as bouquets. Did you see this? They're like they're wearing all black, first of all, like dark black, and they're holding weeds. It's very much giving funereal. And then Joey's groomsmen are in Hawaiian shirts. They very clearly either did not take wedding planning seriously because they knew they weren't gonna get married, or they just didn't talk about what the overall aesthetic of the wedding looked like, because that was just very incohesive. Joey did put a wheelchair in the front row in the wedding hall to represent his sister, and I did think that was really sweet. And it's crazy because like his sisters and his mom, like his mom's like crying, like it's a very, very sweet gesture. And then immediately afterwards, Joey longboards down the aisle. And I'm like, oh, it's like immediately that's done, and now we're watching this man longboard down the aisle. Like whatever goodwill he literally just built up, it's gone. And then as he's longboarding down the aisle, everybody starts like hooting and hollering like they're at a concert. I've never seen this with the Love is Blind weddings, that like not even the people in the audience are taking them seriously. It's very weird. I feel like the guests at the other weddings in the last few seasons have historically had a little more decorum than this. Very, very odd, very weird. So the person officiating the wedding, I think, asks Monica first, like, do you want to marry Joey? And she says no, which is interesting because I was sort of under the impression that she was gonna say yes and he was gonna say no, but she says no. She says that she doesn't feel like both of them are at 100% in the relationship, but she still loves him. And then Joey kind of immediately pulls the like, oh yeah, well, I was gonna say no too. Like, I was gonna say no too. And then they just kind of hug and leave. It's like a very like non-dramatic, just like super silly, like, yeah, neither of us were super in this. And then they leave and the audience is clapping. Honestly, even in the post-wedding interviews, there's seemingly no drama between Joey and Monica. I mean, at least wait until we get to the reunion, but at least like for now, no drama between Joey and Monica. I mean, I really do think that he was gonna say no too. I don't think he was trying to save face when he said that. I do think he was gonna say no. And then in the post-wedding interview, when Joey is talking about why they weren't working, he says that one of the things he was working on is being more physically affectionate towards Monica, which is interesting. I feel like that's code for him saying he wasn't attracted to her, which is like not nice to hear. It's like, I know that's something that's real and they have to talk about it, but it's still like sad to hear. And then this is interesting. Apparently Monica saying that she loved Joey at the altar was the first time that she had ever said it to him, which is not something that I was like really keeping track of. It's not something I noticed, but like that is really interesting that they never said I love you to each other, but somehow they both made it down the aisle. That's very odd to me. Now we're on Virginia and Devin's wedding, and Virginia is really emotional talking to Devin at the altar. I mean, honestly, I think despite their like clear political differences, I actually do think they had the strongest bond, and I think out of all the couples besides Taylor and Daniel, they had the most love for each other, which is interesting. Devin says I do first, and then they ask Virginia, and she takes like this very long pause. It's like very cinematic. She takes this very long pause, and then she goes, I'm not ready. And then her dad in the audience goes, what? He is astonished. It was like honestly kind of like heartbreaking to see him. He was like really shocked. Devin immediately starts crying. His family in the front row looks super pissed. The poor flower girl is like sitting on his mom's lap being like, what's happening? What happened? And then I think like Devin's dad is like, she said no. And then Devin's mom hugs him, and we see on her wrist that she was wearing an Apple Watch. What are you doing wearing an Apple Watch to your son's wedding? That's like, it's like you're acting so pissed that Virginia said no, but I'm like, how are you taking this seriously when you wore an Apple Watch to your son's wedding? She didn't even try to like, you know those like cheap little fake gold Apple Watch bands you could get from Amazon to at least try to make it look good? She didn't even try doing that. And then when everybody's kind of filing out, you hear somebody on Devin's side saying, I just don't understand these girls. He doesn't deserve it. I imagine it's probably his mom. His mom gives like very boy mom, like it was probably her. And then, so that was like basically the end of it. But then I saw that Virginia posted on her story, one of her friends posted on her Instagram story a picture of her like crying at the wedding, and the caption is me ugly crying because I thought my girl was gonna say yes to a dusty Trumper that had her pay for every single meal the entire time. Hashtag free V, hashtag justice for Virginia. Virginia reposted that, and then her other friend posted, those fake tears at the altar really pissed me off. I had to rewind 10 times and still didn't find a single drop. I will not be letting up for the next 3 to 5 business days. You tried the wrong one. Then she added Devin and used hashtag free V, hashtag justice for Virginia, and Virginia reposted that. So I just saw that like while I was watching the episode. I was like scrolling through Reddit as I was listening to everything, and that came up, and I was like, oh, like maybe this relationship wasn't as like pleasant as they made it out to be.
But anyway, back to the actual wedding. So in her little confessional, Virginia says that Devin really held it back when it came to politics, and they never ended up going deep on a lot of aspects on their relationship, including their physical relationship, which I remember they mentioned when they were in Honduras that stuff hadn't really started yet because she wasn't ready, but I didn't realize that they were just never able to make that happen. So I mean, obviously, even seeing what we saw in the reunion, we know that she dodged a bullet, so good for her. And it's interesting because she says the political differences weren't even a deal breaker. I mean, for me, that would be a deal breaker, so I would not have blamed her if she said that it was. But she said that it was the way it was communicated, which is basically that, like, he told her that they were different in this way and he has these differing views, but also he didn't want to talk anymore about it. So, and then she also said that Devin's mom told her that one of their family members gave him a check as a wedding present and he never told her, which is like crazy. I mean, that's giving broke. Like, Virginia's stories were like basically alleging that like Devin was broke and using her for money, but like to not tell your fiance about a wedding gift that both of you received, it's like, why are you afraid that she's gonna take your money? She literally had you sign a prenup. Like, that's embarrassing. That would break my trust too. I totally don't blame her. And then I thought the episode was about to end and I realized I literally forgot about Taylor and Daniel. I feel like I've been forgetting about them all season, but then it showed Taylor getting out of the car and I was like, oh wait, we have another wedding. But I mean, that one, there was literally no drama, as there was basically all season with them, besides that little like Instagram snafu. They both say yes, they get married. It's really sweet. I low-key did shed a little tear when Daniel's sister was singing and playing the piano as everybody entered and walked down the aisle. I thought that was really, really beautiful. So I'm glad we ended on a good note. Like, that was really sweet. But her like singing and playing the piano, I really like that. Now let's get to the reunion, which was literally the best part of this entire season. It was the first time I've ever actually enjoyed Nick and Vanessa's hosting. I've always thought they were really bad hosts, especially during interviews. I've always felt like they weren't very good at like holding guests accountable for the things that they said and like questioning them on those things more. And I feel like they did that this time. So I was like really happy with it. Devin comes out in a wrinkly suit and Joey comes out with that damn longboard. It was so embarrassing, the two of them, so embarrassing. Lauren looks amazing. She's probably my best dressed. She looks really good. Monica's makeup looks amazing. I'm sure she had it professionally done. She also has like a little tan going on. Like, she looks really great. Lauren and Daniel are still married, which I think is predictable. I think they're gonna be one of the Love is Blind couples that's like in it for the long haul. The first thing that they do is they kind of make fun of themselves for like having the Instagram followers app. So that was like good to see. It's good to see that she's self-aware of how ridiculous that whole situation was, but happy to see that they're still happily married. Honestly, I've done like a full 180 on them. I used to be bored to death by them. I used to think they were so cringeworthy and just like not worth paying attention to. And the thing is, like, they are cringeworthy and they are a little boring, but I feel like those are the reasons why they're probably gonna stay married for a really long time. Daniel got a tattoo of Taylor's eyes on his chest and it's so creepy and it looks so weird. It's the way that he got it done. It's not just her two eyes loose, like how you normally see just two free floating eyes. He clearly like took a picture of her and cropped it so that all the tattoo artist saw was this. And then the tattoo artist tattooed it with borders. Like it looked like a cropped picture. It's like a rectangular tattoo. It looks so weird. I think the placement is horrible. It's honestly a really, really creepy tattoo, but like, I mean, his eyes are literally welling up as he's talking about her. It's like very sweet, but that tattoo is scary. Virginia and Devin are in the hot seat first. She says that Devin didn't want to talk about his core values on camera, and she doesn't. So this is what she does. I think it's very smart. She goes, I still don't feel comfortable talking about his core values on camera, but I will happily talk about mine, which basically insinuates that Devin's core values are the exact opposite of hers. So she says that she supports the LGBTQ plus community and she's pro-choice. And then she also believes that all religions should be valued because they're all different ways of communicating to God, like different languages. I actually really like that. I love that she said that. I'm an atheist, but like her putting it in that way, I've never heard anybody say that. So I just thought that was like really cool to hear. I thought that was like a different perspective than I've heard a lot of religious people share. Devin says that he believes you can have a relationship despite not agreeing on every single thing, which is what every single conservative man says. That is the classic conservative guy line. They always try to pin it back on you, being like, oh, well, I personally think that like you don't have to agree on every single thing to be in a relationship, which is like, duh. Yes, of course you don't. But when those things are like human rights and like, should women have autonomy over their own bodies? Yeah, in my opinion, those are two things that you should have to agree on. And then Virginia said that she found a note from his ex-girlfriend on his nightstand in his hotel room the day before the wedding. And then Devin's like, well, I don't really see her as an ex because we dated in high school and like her partner now is one of my groomsmen. And Virginia apparently met that girl and she didn't know that they ever even dated until Devin's mom told her. I mean, listen, like, out of all of the problems that Devin and Virginia had, I think this is the least important. Like, I don't think this is that big of a deal. If they dated in high school, it's like, whatever. The fact that she's like leaving notes on Devin's nightstand is weird. I feel like if I was her partner, I'd be like, oh, why are you leaving notes on my boy's nightstand? That's kind of weird. But I don't think that should be like the nail in Devin's coffin. I don't think that that's that serious of a problem. But at the end of the day, if that made Virginia feel uncomfortable, then it's legitimate. I mean, it is like a little weird, like your ex, even from high school, leaving a note on your nightstand the night before your wedding. It's weird. So then we get to the check. And apparently 3 or 4 days before the wedding, Virginia ran into Devin's mom at a basketball game. And his mom asked if Devin told her that his boss, so it wasn't a family member, I guess it was his boss, gave him $1,000 check for the wedding, which that's not a small amount, $1,000. I feel like that's more than you would typically get from a guest at your wedding. And she says that he never told her. I'm not gonna lie, the conversation between them in the reunion seemed really choppy. Like it feels like they had a longer conversation that was just kind of like cut to bits and put together like Frankenstein style. Because a lot of the things they were saying didn't seem like they were in response to each other. I think they just kind of like cut up a bunch of their most dramatic sentences and then just let them go back to back. Virginia said that he stopped talking to her completely after the wedding and ignored all of her phone calls, but apparently Devin has been going around saying that she ghosted him. And then Devin's like, oh, I never told anybody that you ghosted me. And then Madison's like, you told me. Devin is awful. Devin sucks. I think Devin is a man-child. I don't think he's a real man. I think he's a coward. Clearly, he's broke. I mean, I don't think he's beating the broke allegations of literally everybody's out here being like, yeah, he's hiding checks from Virginia, and then he's also having her pay for all of his meals. Like, it's giving broke. And then the entire time him and Virginia are having this conversation on stage, whenever Virginia's talking, he has this, like, smug little smile, like he thinks he's winning, when it's like, I don't don't know who's like in your ear, probably your mom. It's probably his mom in his ear being like, oh, you're doing so great. Like, Virginia's a bitch. Everybody's gonna hate her. Like, everybody's gonna see that you're the real victim here. When it's like, no, everybody hates you. You're a mess. You are a different person than you were leading Virginia to believe. I'm glad we don't have to see him anymore. Ben and Sarah are next. The first thing Ben does right out the gate, I don't even think anybody asked him a question yet. He immediately starts acknowledging his privilege. He's doing a privilege acknowledgement, being like, I just want to say, like, I grew up in such privilege, like, as a white man, like, I grew up in so much privilege, blah, blah, blah. Nobody even asked him anything. So, like, clearly the PR coaching that he got from Jimmy really paid off. And then when they show Sarah, they show her from, like, maybe this angle right here, and the poor thing has a rash, like, all over her upper body. It's like all on her arms and on her chest and on her face. I mean, she clearly was so emotionally affected by this whole situation, and she's so nervous to be there. I mean, honestly, it was really sad. It was like very like, wow, this clearly affected you so much. I mean, as it should. Like, it's just a sign that there were real feelings involved. Nick asks if Ben really didn't remember his church's stance on gay marriage or if he just didn't want to remember. And Ben is sticking with his story. He's like, I didn't remember because at the time I didn't need to, and I feel very ashamed. We're going back to his privilege. And he says that he either wasn't at church that weekend when they gave the sermon that Sarah listened to, or he forgot about it. I don't believe for a second that Ben does not know his church's stance on the gay community. I think Ben just agrees with his church's conservative stance on the gay community, and he doesn't want to admit it. Because the fact of the matter is, like, even in 2025, I would say that most churches, probably also most churches in Minnesota, are anti-LGBTQ. If I had to guess, I would say that that's the case. So I feel like if Ben's church had a positive viewpoint on the gay community, he would probably remember it because that's very different than what other churches do. It's like novel, like, oh, this church is accepting of everybody. Like, that's different. So the fact that he doesn't remember probably means that he knew the whole time. They bring up the TikTok girl. Do you remember the woman Andra who made a video about how, like, oh, why did you platform this horrible man from Minnesota? He's a manipulator, blah, blah, blah. And it ended up being about Ben. They bring her up, but they honestly don't really talk about her much. Sarah just says, like, yeah, the attention the video got concerned me, but I chose to trust Ben. And then she goes, well, now knowing what I know about Ben, the TikTok made sense. And that leads into this insane story about how, so Sarah's a travel nurse. This is a fact I completely forgot. I either fast forwarded through it in the pods or it just completely slipped my mind. And they lived together for like a week or two after the wedding, which is like crazy to me. If that was me, I would have been out the door. If I had known I was going to say no at the altar, I would have like secretly packed my stuff and moved out the night before the wedding. But apparently Sarah got a nursing contract in Nashville for I think several months. I think she said like maybe 5 to 6 months, or maybe this just was like 2 months. I don't know, somewhere around there. And she had a discussion about it with Ben. And I guess Ben told her that he would go with her to Nashville. So this is like really interesting because Sarah like laughed at him when Ben asked if she wanted to continue their relationship after the altar, but it seemed like she did really consider it for a bit. So they decided that she would drive because she needs her car, and he would fly there, and he could just use her car while they're there. And the next morning, she drove the 12 and a half hours to Nashville from Minnesota. And by the time she got there, he had removed her from Find My Friends, which, I mean, I don't like couples having each other on Find My Friends. But that aside, it's like, sure, if he had you and then he removed you, that's weird. Then she texted him and was like, hey, what's going on? And he apparently sent her an apology that just seemed so scripted, just like a classic paragraph long apology. And then he just didn't talk to her for a month and a half. And then the next time he talked to her, it was because he spoke to a past cast member who advised him to be on good terms with her and practice reunion questions together. And when I tell you, the way that Nick and Vanessa both turn around to face him at the exact same time, it's crazy. She's literally like, yeah, he talked to a past cast member who was like giving him PR advice. And they literally both go, it was honestly really funny. I don't know. I was really liking them during this reunion. I feel like I normally don't. Maybe I was just in a really good mood. I don't know. And they try to ask him who the past cast member he talked to was. And Ben is like trying to like dodge the question, being like, oh, all I can tell you is he's probably going to be in the top 5 Love is Blind moments. But like, I'm not going to say anything more. And then they turn to Sarah and they're like, Sarah, who was it? And she goes, it was Jimmy. So what I will say, because it's like funny when you hear it out of context, you're like, oh my God, that's so lame. Like Ben is taking advice from Jimmy, like PR advice, and like Jimmy's telling him to practice reunion questions together. That's so lame. What I will say is I came across later that night a TikTok that Jimmy posted, and Jimmy was like, listen, I'm catching a lot of strays from this reunion, so I just wanted to say, like, apparently it's standard practice after Love is Blind. I think the producers will put you in contact with past cast members just as like a form of psychological support, because after the reunion, after the show airs, obviously you're getting a lot of backlash from fans. It can be really overwhelming. So Jimmy said it was like that situation. It's almost like a mentor-mentee relationship, or just like an assigned friend, like, hey, I want to be here for you. He didn't deny giving the advice for practicing reunion questions together, but I think it's like standard practice for the Love is Blind producers to put current cast members in touch with past cast members. Like, if you remember Leo from... Is Leo last season? I think Leo was last season. He was in Jimmy's comments being like, you were a great resource to me after my season when I was like getting a shit ton of hate. So like, thank you. So clearly it is like a thing that they do. So regarding this Nashville situation, Ben said that his understanding was they were broken up when she went to Nashville. And the way he gets over breakups is just to do a clean break. And I'm over here thinking like, well, Sarah literally thought you were coming with her to Nashville. So why do you think that you broke up? Somebody is missing something here, because how could you possibly think that you broke up? Meanwhile, Sarah is like thinking you're going to live with her in Nashville for 5 months. And Sarah basically says the same thing, exactly as I was thinking it. She's like, we literally discussed logistics about you moving to Nashville with me. And then Ben says, they keep this kind of like ambiguous, but Ben says that when the last date that they had before she went to Nashville, he felt as though it was closure and they ended it. And then Lauren pipes up and she's like, I'm friends with Sarah. And like, based on what she's told me, that is very much not how she interpreted it. And then Sarah just says she feels super love bombed and duped. And that's how they end that conversation. I think Ben is just very calculated. I think he's just a very calculated person. He wanted to be on TV. He wanted to cause drama. He wanted to try to launch an influencer career. I'm pretty sure there are like rumors going around right now that he hired like a PR coach before he even went on the show to like help prep him. So like, he's clearly a super calculated person. I mean, honestly, if you watch the wedding, like, he doesn't even seem upset when she says no. He literally doesn't seem like he cares at all. Then he and his friends do that little prayer huddle together, and they're praying for like the well-being and safety of both Ben and Sarah. He's not even crying. He doesn't seem sad at all. He walks over to like that little rose wall. He picks up a fake rose. It's like made of plastic, and he's like sniffing it. It just all seems so calculated to try to like put on this image. I don't think that he really liked her that much at all. Joey and Monica's turn. Monica says that it's true. She never told Joey that she loved him, but also he didn't say it to her either, which is like crazy. How did you make it down the aisle then? I would be so curious if like, I mean, obviously these people want to launch influencer careers, but like, I would be super curious to see if there's some sort of incentive from Netflix to make it down the aisle, because there are so many times when I'm watching, not even just this season of Love is Blind, any of the past seasons, where I'm like, you should have broken up so long ago. Like, you have all of these obvious problems in your relationship. You clearly know you're gonna say no at the altar. Why are you doing this? So I'd be very curious to know if there's some kind of incentive for making it all the way. And then this was honestly really sad. She says that she was never shown that he loved her, and as a woman, you shouldn't have to beg your fiance to touch you. It's like sad, and she's embarrassed watching it back to not have seen that Joey clearly wasn't into her. That's just like sad. I mean, as a woman, like, is there anything more like devastating and like humiliating than feeling ugly, like feeling like your partner isn't attracted to you? That's like a feeling that I can see how she was like in denial about it and she didn't want to think about it. But like, cause like that's a really complicated feeling. And I really, that's like tough. It made me really sad hearing that because it very clearly affected her. I mean, she's like, I think she cries. I think she's like tearing up. Joey immediately blames it on Monica's sister. He says that he feels like they never got out of the friend zone and Monica's sister having doubts played a big role in it. And like family's the number one thing to him. And if your sister doesn't like me, how can we possibly get married? Which is like legitimate reason, but also like even besides that, you clearly weren't in love with her. So how much did that really matter if you weren't in love with her in the first place and you weren't attracted to her? And then Monica says that the day they went tubing, I think all of the cast members went tubing that day. It was like their final date before the altar. She found out that he slid into one of the other cast members' DMs. We later find out this is Madison. But he slid into Madison's DMs after he saw her when they like all met up at the bar, the whole pod squad. And Joey says that he reached out to a few people because he likes to check in on people. And he says that he DM'd Madison and just said, "It was great seeing you. Hope that you're well." I don't think we ever saw Joey and Madison date in the pods, but Madison says that they did date, which is so funny because I don't think I can think of two more incompatible people from this season. I feel like she would have like run him into the ground. Like she would have stomped all over him. And apparently the day that the pod squad all met up at the bar, he DM'd her and said, "Loving the pink hair, wish we could have talked more." Which again, it's like similar to the nightstand thing with Devin, the note on the nightstand. Is that something breakup worthy? No. Would it give me pause if we're literally about to get married? Yes. Like it's definitely something I would be asking about. And considering Monica already had insecurities that he wasn't attracted to her, it's like, yeah, that would probably piss me off too. So after the wedding, Monica and Joey still, I guess, kind of acted like they were dating. I think they were going to each other's like family events, which is interesting. Maybe they were just kind of trying to give it like one more shot to try to force it to work. And apparently they did get physical. It's like honestly a really awkward moment because Monica's like, "Yeah, we got physical a couple of times," and then Joey goes, "Once." And it's like, okay, like relax, whatever, however many times. But like, damn, like she's already insecure about the fact that you're not attracted to her and you really have to be like, "No, we actually didn't do it that many times." It's like, all right, relax. He apparently told her that Madison was coming on to him and tried approaching him at a bar once because all of these people see each other at the bars in Minneapolis all the time. It's again, they keep hammering it home. It's a small city. And then sometime later, Monica finally saw Madison on like a party bus. These people end up in like super random situations. And it also sounds like all they do all day is drink. Like anytime they talk about running into each other, it's always like at a bar. Now they're on a party bus. Oh, we run into each other at the bars all the time. I'm like, wow, you guys really go out a lot. Madison's saying it's a lie. She wasn't coming on to Joey. I believe her. I don't think that she would be into a guy like Joey. I mean, they're like opposites in like a way that would not attract. And also he's not attractive. I don't think she would be into that. And then it's just like he said, she said. Joey's like, "I didn't bring up Madison. You brought up Madison. Like I don't have any interest in Madison. Madison's the one who has interest in me." And Madison's like, "Oh, that's not true." Like Joey's insisting that Monica's the one making a super big deal about the Madison thing. But then Madison and Monica are saying that he's the one who brought Madison up first. It's so stupid. It's so dumb. Monica basically just ends it by saying like, "Listen, as a romantic partner, you have a lot to learn and I'm just ready to shut the door." And like, I would be too. What a mess. I mean, I feel like Joey really showed his true colors at the reunion. And like the way his sisters were sitting there in the audience giving Monica the dirtiest looks. Did you catch that? Like, I'm pretty sure at one point they cut to the sisters and I think the younger one like rolled her eyes when Monica was talking or something. It was just like, they just gave off very mean girl vibes. I really didn't like that. Now we're on Dave and Lauren. And the first thing that Nick does is ask Dave about his sister. And I was so hoping that his sister would be at the reunion, but she wasn't. But I was so hoping that we would get to meet her finally. I think that would have been the perfect end to the season. But of course she wasn't there. And Dave just repeats that she was worried that he would get a bad edit. And didn't he also say at one point that he didn't even tell his family he was going on the show until the day before he left? Which is like, sure, like, I guess if I was a sister hearing that, I would maybe also have concerns. Like, she clearly didn't have enough time to process the situation. So apparently Dave really had like a come to Jesus moment when they're talking about the guy who Lauren hooked up with before going on the show. He had this like revelation that like, hey, maybe women are allowed to hook up with other guys and that doesn't have any bearing on any future relationships that they have. It's like he finally realizes this basic concept. He texts Lauren an apology. I think he did this maybe like a few months ago. And Lauren says that she appreciated the text, but she didn't need it because she's already known the entire time, like, yeah, I told you that it wasn't a big deal. Like, you were the one who was so hung up on it. Vanessa asked Dave if he really did believe his friends over Lauren when it came to this guy, or if he was just looking for an out. I think that was a really good question because literally with Molly, the way that he ended it was just like goading her into ending it, you know what I mean? Like pushing her away until Molly was finally like, oh, I'm gonna end it. So I feel like that's a good question. Like, were you doing the same thing with Lauren, or did you actually believe your friends? He says he wasn't looking for an out at all, but he put way too much stock in the situation. And then it gets like so dramatic. Vanessa's like, do you think that Lauren is the one who got away? And he's like, yes, like I do think that she's the one who got away. And then Lauren's like, well, honestly, I don't believe you. You have my phone number and we see each other in public all the time. Like, and clearly Lauren is so nice. Lauren has been defending Dave on social media like the entire time the show has been airing. Lauren has been like, listen, we all have our flaws. She's been like posting on her stories, like, stop giving so much hate to Dave, like, enough, we're all human, we all make mistakes. So clearly I feel like Dave knows that Lauren is receptive to like him communicating with her. So like, yeah, it's like if a guy's looking at me and being like, oh, she's the one who got away, I'd be like, okay, well, you haven't tried to contact me. You see me all the time in public and you avoid me. You don't talk to me. Like, good for her not believing him. Good for her. And then the letter comes up. Remember when Lauren wrote Dave's sister a letter appealing to like why she should take her seriously? And Dave didn't give it to her the night that Lauren gave the letter to him. Dave apparently says that he did give the letter to his sister, and Lauren's like, no, you didn't. I found it in your coat pocket when you came home. And he's like, oh, well, I didn't give it to her that night, but I did give it to her later. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? When is later? Like, you gave it to her after you wrapped filming, after the show aired? Like, when did you give her the letter? He was being very non-specific about that. And then, God, Dave's sister, it's so ominous. And then he like says, oh, my sister had her mind made up at that point, and I can't really elaborate on that. It's so ominous. Why is it always so ominous? It's like we're talking about Darth Vader. It's so funny. And then Lauren wants to clarify she totally did not need to do this. I think she's a really, really good person. I think she's too good of a person for her own good. She clarifies, she's like, listen, I've seen the things that people have been saying about you online. I just want you to know that I don't think you're a narcissist or a manipulator, which is like sweet of her to say. And I do sort of get why she's saying that, even though I don't believe, I don't like agree with that. I do think he's a narcissist. But I like, if a bunch of people, if an entire nation of people was insulting somebody on my behalf, that would make me uncomfortable. I wouldn't like that. It's like, if I have beef with someone, let me take care of it. Don't go into their comments and be like insulting them, because like we've seen on this reality show, on these reality shows, like people take their lives, people spiral, people like go crazy over the hate that they get online. So if I saw that a bunch of people were sending hate comments to somebody on my behalf, that would also make me uncomfortable, and I would also want to publicly denounce it. So I do get why she did that. I just think that ultimately Dave has a lot to work through when it comes to misogyny. I think he's a misogynist. I think he's a slut shamer. I think he has a very weird obsession with women's purity. I've talked about it before. It's very, very old-fashioned. It's not okay. It's certainly not somebody I would ever encourage my friends to date. Like, I think he has a lot to work through when it comes to that, and he seems to be acknowledging that that's the case, We'll see if he's lying or not, but I think that is really his main problem. I think if it wasn't for that, I actually think they could have worked. Now we're on Mason, Meg, and Madison. And I would be lying if I said this situation didn't confuse me so deeply. I so much do not understand what's going on with them. First, so Mason and Meg, when we saw the pod squad at the bar, I think they were dating at the time. And then on the reunion, they show a clip of them, I think, meeting for the first time in real life, or they were just doing something silly. They reenacted like a Love is Blind like reveal at one of their apartments. It was just kind of stupid. And then Mason is like, no, we're not dating anymore, but we're just like best friends. And they started dating last year and it didn't work out, whatever. Honestly, this part of the show, I just didn't like watching. I know there's a lot of Madison hate out there. I kind of don't get it. I think she's just a classic, like, dramatic 26-year-old. Isn't she, like, really young? I just don't understand all of the hate that she gets. And this part of the reunion is really tough to watch because it's basically one couch of people just attacking her relentlessly over and over. It's like Meg, Mason, and Alex. Meg is really giving, like, guys girl vibes in this. I really did not like that. I'm like, girl, you're not even dating this man. You don't have to come to his defense like that. So it just made me really uncomfortable. Alex says that watching Madison date him and Mason felt like watching two different people. And Mason is like, well, you made me feel like I was your number one, and I really wish I had validated Meg the way I validated you because she's the one who deserved it. And I was just like, I don't know, was that the case? Like, was all of that edited out? Because I felt like Madison was super consistent throughout the pods. And like, how many times have men, literally Dave does it this season with Molly and Lauren. How many times are men on this show dating two women, making each of them feel special and like they're number ones? Like, this is not the first time it's happened. And then this was so stupid. So Meg calls out Madison, who I guess recently did an interview calling Mason manipulative. And then Madison is like, yeah, I said that because I tried talking to Mason about having a connection with both you and I, and he pretended like I was still his number one. And then Mason goes, yeah, honestly, when I said that, I was kind of flattered because, like, do you really think I'm smart enough to manipulate someone? That is a manipulative sentence. So congratulations, you just proved it. That's a manipulative sentence. You are literally in that sentence manipulating and gaslighting someone. So actually, yes, I do think that you're capable of manipulating someone. So stupid. What an idiot. I'm gonna be honest with you. Madison to me is very much giving Noor vibes from Love is Blind Habibi. I don't think they're on the same like emotional maturity plane at all. Let's make that very clear. But just in terms of like, Madison literally has three people just like relentlessly going at her. And I personally think she's really great about keeping her cool, speaking in a level tone. She's not cursing. She's not yelling. She's not hurling insults at people. I would not be able to do that. I think if I were to go on a reality TV show, any kind of show, it would be so easy to give me a villain edit because I would be out here yelling. I would get so frustrated with people. I would be cursing. I would be insulting people. I just get frustrated like that, especially when I'm being attacked. So like, I get there's a lot of Madison hate out there. I honestly think she did a decent job at this reunion. And then Alex tries telling Madison that she's the manipulative one. And then Madison is like, well, you're a different person on and off camera. And yeah, I mean, isn't Alex off camera somebody who invites minors to his house parties? Like, yeah, it does sound like he's different on and off camera. Those allegations about him are so haunting. So that's why it's like, anybody who's taking his side in an argument in this reunion, I'm like, oh no, this guy is weird. I don't like him. He has some serious allegations against him, some serious pedophilic allegations, and that's why I just did not like watching this part at all. And then Madison kind of tries to have a moment. She pulls out screenshots of, she's essentially trying to prove like, oh, you're pretending like you're Mason's best friend, but all you do is make fun of him. And then she pulls out these text messages of him. I mean, I guess Alex is kind of making fun of Mason, but it's nothing really serious. And she's pointing, she's like, look, he's using the laughing emoji here. He's using the skull emoji here. Like, you're making fun of him. And it's like, that's not really doing what I think you're doing. It's not a strong enough case. If he had been a little more intense about it and maybe a little meaner about it, you could probably get away with it, but I don't think that was doing what she thought it was doing. And then this is like the most clunky part of the reunion. They're literally like mid-argument. They're clearly not going to get anywhere. And Nick and Vanessa just turn to the camera and they go, Okay, who wants to see the second top Love is Blind moment? It's like so anticlimactic. There's no closure there. It doesn't end ever. I'm sure to this day they're still beefing. I fast forwarded through all of those top Love is Blind moments, by the way. Why are they so committed to wasting our time on this show? Who cares? Who wants to see that? Literally no other show does that. The Housewives don't do that. Love Island doesn't do that. Like when you turn on an episode of The Housewives and Love Island, you are going to see current events. You are going to see the footage they recently shot, and then when the episode is over, it's over. There's no like, oh, let's add in all of these clips and let's bring back all of these old guests. It's like they don't need to do that because the shows are strong on their own. And I think Love is Blind, for some reason, they don't think the show is strong enough on its own, so they constantly have to be bringing back these old cast members. Like AD comes back with her man. I think her man is Ollie. Oh yeah, her man is Ollie from Love is Blind UK. It's so funny because I saw him and I sort of was like, why does that guy look familiar? And they not only have they gotten together, but they show a clip of Ollie proposing to her, which is like sweet, but I was like, whoa, I didn't even know they were dating. But apparently they both, I think, are on this upcoming season of Perfect Match, and clearly it worked. Clearly they found a perfect match within each other because they are now engaged. Good for her. And then they show this like super awkward clip. A player on the Minnesota Vikings is like holding a football and he's like, I'm happy to pass the ball to the next season of Love is Blind. And then he like fakes throwing the ball. Then a player from the Denver Broncos catches it. They're both, by the way, filming on their MacBook cameras. I literally think that both of their clips were filmed in iMovie or the photo booth app on their MacBook Airs because the footage looked so bad. It was so funny. They were so clearly reading off of like a phone that was just off camera. They were both so awkward. It was just really funny. But the next season of Love is Blind is going to be in Denver, which I'm a little scared for. I don't know too much about Denver as a city. I mean, I at least know it's a lot more liberal than Minnesota, which I'm excited for. I definitely want a group of way more left-leaning people, but I'm a little scared at the idea of like 26 rock climbers dating each other. You know what I mean? I feel like we're gonna have to hear a lot about outdoorsy stuff and like kayaking, and all of the dates are gonna be like cliff jumping or something like that. I don't know. I'm not super optimistic about it, but I do think that Denver kind of has small town vibes the way that Minnesota does. So maybe it'll be good. I don't know. But that's it, guys. It's over. That was a long one. There was definitely a lot to go over, but I was super pleased with this reunion. I really was entertained watching it. The only thing I skipped was that musical performance at the end. They were like, oh, you've definitely heard this guy's songs on Love is Blind. I was like, have I? I skipped that at the end. And Love is Blind ended at the perfect time because The Valley is coming back. The trailer dropped, I think, today. So super excited to be covering that. Don't forget, I recently dropped my Summer House recap. You can check that out. It should be like 1 or 2 days back on the channel. And then keep an eye out next week. I'm going to be covering The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and Summer House. And I'm going to keep an eye out for all of these shows that are coming back for their next seasons. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.